Hello, this is just a quick video to show my inverted pendulum in Box2D experiment, and you can get this from the link in the description and try it yourself. But basically what we have here is a couple of bodies. The one at the bottom is stuck to the ground with a prismatic joint, so it slides along like this, and the one at the top is connected to that one by a revolute joint. And by controlling the prismatic joint motor, controlling how fast it moves sideways like this, we can, if we're clever, we can make the pendulum, which is, it's not really a pendulum because it's just a stick really, but by adjusting the speed of this slider at the bottom, we can get it to balance the pendulum on top of itself and bring it back to the center point in the middle of the screen. This is quite an easy version of this because we can set whatever speed we like for the prismatic joint motor, even if it's not realistic. Like we can just set, you know, 1,000,000 or whatever, and it will still work. And I've made it so that you can push a key and change the target point, which is this little red marker here, and the pendulum will go and follow along to that target point. If it gets so far away from the vertical position that it would have to move really fast to recover, it just gives up like that. So we need to, the pendulum needs to be in a position where it's at least reasonably possible to balance it like that, and then it can recover. Okay, that's the first version, and I made a couple of other versions. This is how a lot of experiments are done as well in real life. They put the pendulum on a cart, and as you can see now we're not attached to the ground anymore, we just have a little rolling car sort of a thing, and the principle is the same. We just calculate how quickly horizontally we need to move the cart. The main difference here, especially from Box2D point of view, is that now we are relying on the friction between the wheels and the ground to move the cart sideways. And as you may know, in Box2D it's a bit hard to get really good friction between two surfaces like this because the two bodies are perfectly rigid, so they don't have any squashiness like car tires do with rubber touching concrete. There's always a bit of absorption of the shock, so they never bounce off each other very much. They're always sort of pressed together quite well, but that's not the case in Box2D. As you can see, it doesn't take much to make one of the wheels spin more than the other like that, and we quickly lose traction. So it places a limit on how quickly we can correct the situation. So if I put this over here, we won't be able to have such a steep angle when we're moving the pendulum between these targets. So we just have to take things a little bit slower. That's all. And another thing that's kind of a nuisance is that the wheels, when they spin, they have quite a bit of torque, or the torque has quite a bit of an effect on the overall bodies. Oh, look at that. So that's a bit of a bummer. In real life, of course, you don't need to make wheels very heavy. They're usually very light compared to the overall structure. But in Box2D, the wheels need to be of a similar mass to the thing that they're supporting. Anyway, the last example I made was kind of like a segue, and this was done. There's actually 3 bodies here. I made the wheel, which is connected to a fixed rotation body at the bottom to be an axle, and then the pendulum as before. And this is actually on a wheel joint now because, like I said before, with the contact between the wheel and the ground being a perfectly rigid one, it gives pretty poor traction. And I found that without making this a wheel joint, like when I was just using a revolute joint, the wheel at the bottom here was only really touching the ground every second frame. It was sort of bouncing perpetually. But the wheel joint takes care of that problem and gives us quite reasonably good traction between the ground and the wheel. So the idea is the same here, and once again we're relying on the friction to give us the horizontal force, so we can't really go too crazy with the steepness of the angle. But it actually recovers from a drop better than the cart does because it has less the torque of the spinning wheel. There's only one spinning wheel, so there's less of an effect of it. So anyway, you can get this from the link in the description and play around with it yourself. Source code is there too.